Okay, now we're going to tackle the carburetor. This is probably going to be a whole video on its own about this carburetor. Taking it off, cleaning it up, etc. Right, so all we've got is 5 screws around the outside edge of the carb. They should be fairly loose, they're just flathead screws. They normally are on these old Briggs. Sometimes they're Phillips heads, but most of the time they're these little flat screws. Okay, once all the screws are out of your carburetor, there is a small screw here to remove. That gives access through this little side panel to the actual mechanism that opens and closes the choke. Let's see if we can get that gasket to come off of there. It ripped. Oh well, no biggie. Right, so all we have here is a small hook, and as the choke is opened, that hook basically just pushes down the spring there. Because I've removed the cover, it's popped out, but the diaphragm feels pretty good. Right, now we'll be able to remove the whole carburetor. Take that screw out that I just put back in to stop it moving. Right, just manoeuvre that around so that comes out. And there we go, there we have it. That's the actual carburetor. Now off. And there's really nothing really in there to clean at all. All we've got is the main pickup tube here from the tank. There'll be a jet in here behind this mixture needle, and maybe a couple more jets in the carburetor just to quickly blast through. There's one there as well, just to blast through as well. Yeah, not bad. That should be pretty easy. Now we've got to try and get this carburetor diaphragm off without damaging it. Rubber gloves. Right, got to try not to damage this. Won't be held in there with much. It's just purely the age of the rubber that is making it stick there. But the actual diaphragm feels pretty damn good. It's nice and rubbery still. You can get replacements of these from America, like most Briggs and Stratton parts for engines of these age. They are quite difficult to get the parts in the UK. There we go, just have a small spring at the back here of the diaphragm. The diaphragm looks pretty good. I mean, I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. The engine should run with that just fine. For a little bit of a clean off, she should run okay. Right, I'm just going to put that inside this box over here, just to keep that out of the way. Now we have our fuel tank. This fuel tank does have some pretty manky goop inside that we're going to try and clean out. So let's do that in a minute. But attention can now turn to the old carburetor. Small rubber tube here. That's just for the crankcase breather tube to go into. That comes off really easily. We shouldn't have to remove any of the choke mechanism inside. It's all nice and free, so that should be fine. Got a small rubber gasket here that just helps to seal the air filter, so we'll take that off as well. Yeah, then all we've got is the actual main mixing jet on the carburetor to remove. Okay, before I remove this, I'm just going to turn this mixture screw all the way in and count the number of turns, just for my own reference really, so I can attempt just to set it up exactly the same and see if the engine runs. But Briggs and Stratton go on the general rule that all their engines should fire up and run to some extent with this mixture needle turned 1.5 turns out, and then you adjust it from there. So we're just going to turn that in, count the number of turns that we have here. That's half a turn, 1 turn, 1.5. Okay, so that was 1 3/4 turns out, which seems about right. So that should be okay. So 1 3/4 turns out. Now we just want to remove the main jet. Those can sometimes be done up pretty tight. They don't have to be done up. Oh god, they don't have to be done up very tight at all, but somebody has gone overboard with this one. Okay, we just got the carburetor gently clamped in the vise. No real pressure on there at all, so we're not damaging any of the gasket surface. Just keep moving camera tripod. Now we're trying to remove this. As you can see, we've got, there we go, just need a little bit of persuasion. They don't really have to be done up that tight at all. You can damage the threads doing it up that tight. You want to inspect the end of the needle. The camera isn't very good for close-ups, but the end of the needle here should be nice and straight, and you're looking for something that doesn't have a big score mark in it where it's been done up too tight. This one seems to be okay. We should be able to run the engine with that. Just got a small fibre washer here, just helps seal it off. We'll probably replace that, although this one is in good condition, could probably be reused. Okay, behind here we have a small brass jet that we're going to need to get out. We're going to get a bigger screwdriver for that so we don't damage it. Okay, so in there you can see the small brass jet. That shouldn't be tight either. If that's tight, then you could do some damage to it trying to get it out. Ideally it wants to come out to be cleaned properly, but you could probably get away with a quick blast through there of some carb cleaner or WD-40. I'll just tip the whole carburetor up, and the small jet will come out. Again, just examine that. It's actually clear. The engine probably would have run without any attention to the carburetor, so it's not bad really. Just got 3 small holes in here, one at the very bottom down here which allows fuel through into there, and then 2 small holes at the very back. So this just could. So we're just going to blast those through with some WD-40 now, and the carburetor should be good to go. The old rubber seal in the back of the carburetor is pretty much gone. Might want to replace that if we can find an O-ring of the right size. Just helps to seal the back of the throttle body, because if you have an air leak there, you're going to completely bypass the throttle, and that will make it run a bit erratic. So we'll see if we can get a replacement one of those. But other than that, I don't think anything else in the carburetor is actually going to need replacing at all. So that's not bad at all. Right, let's just see if we're getting anything coming through. That's working. She should suck up fuel fine. See what we get through here now. Is there anything? Yep, that one's clear. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole carburetor is nice and clear. She should be fine. Right, well, we can clear the other brass jet there and start putting it back together. That's not a bad carburetor at all. It's actually nice and clean as well. It's pretty unusual. Usually they're covered in filth. Yeah, okay, so just check that this small jet is clear. It is pretty clear anyway, but we'll give it a blast through as well. Yep, that's working pretty well. That should be fine. Okay, that should be ready to go back in. Shouldn't have a problem with that at all. Should be a pretty good carburetor. thread that all the way back in till it bottoms out. Doesn't need to be done up tight at all. Just keep on threading that in. There you go, it's bottomed out. That's now in there. And should work fine. Okay, we're not going to need to replace anything on the old mixture needle. It's pretty good. Just give that a little bit of a clean off. Yeah, add a little bit of crud on it. So not going to have to need to replace the fibre washer. That's in pretty good nick, so that should do just fine. Just pinch that up. It doesn't need to be done up tight at all. We could set that now. We'll just put that to the good old 1.5 turns out. That should get a Briggs and Stratton engine to start. Right, so that's half. That's 1 full turn out, and that's half again. So that should get the engine to run. Probably won't run superb in that position, but from there we can then adjust it until it's running well, sitting happy. Just put our rubber seal for the air filter back on. Pretty easy to do. We'll also put the small rubber boot back on. Okay, now the fuel tank. This one's got some pretty horrible crud laying in the bottom, so we're going to clean that out now. Just going to use some petrol to flush that through, and that should be okay. Shouldn't have any problems. Okay, so just let our petrol sit in there for a second. You can already see it's doing some good. Slosh it around a little bit. Get it in there, get it working away. Yeah, it's looking pretty good now. It's a rust-free petrol tank on this one, which is pretty nice. Also check to make sure that our holes here to relieve the pressure in the fuel tank are clear. You can see daylight through them, so that's alright. So just put that back on for a second. Clean the outside of the tank whilst that petrol is working its magic and dissolving all the gunk that's in there. Okay, now go ahead and refit the carburetor. Not doing too badly now. She's coming along nicely. It literally just goes in there. Alright, now here's the fun bit. Trying to get the actual carburetor itself back on there. And getting all the Okay, now we're going to rehook our choke mechanism. Make sure the choke is in there flat like that, so when it lifts up it comes in contact with the screw like that and it's fully open. So make sure it's closed on that side and then just put the hook back inside the hole and we're ready to put our little cover back on. Pretty easy to do. And there we have it. That's a rather basic look and basic clean of a 1973 Chocomatic Carb. Now that we've got it all back together, just check to make sure that the actual choke is opening and closing as freely as it was before we started, which it is. That's pretty good. As predicted, the diaphragm was pretty good in there. We shouldn't need to replace that, but you know, could need to replace it sometime in the future. But I think the engine will run nicely